Welcome back, boys and girls. I told you I was gonna be back with another video, so here I am. This time to actually show some meat, not just talking whatnot. No, actually, the project that I've been developing for the last, let's say, month, maybe 2 months maximum. Also, I really hope that the quality improved a little bit. I'm trying somewhat of a different setup, and I really hope this works better video wise, also sound wise, and also light wise. So, I have a new game.
Really?
Once again, yes. But I guess that's also the way of starting in the developer. A lot of ideas, a lot of things that go wrong, a lot of things that you didn't plan for. So through all the resets, here I am once again with another project, and hopefully this one actually comes true because I'm really enjoying where it's headed so far. Let's do this one first, a brief explanation of the game. Of course, I will also go through the engine to actually show a little bit more than just this brief explanation, because I still can't explain it that good as well. But basically, overall, it's an arena shooter, but you're driving a vehicle. It's not the vehicle that shoots. You control both the driver and the passenger. The idea is that I will create some, let's say, and not NPCs. Yeah, let's say NPCs, and they will have like hopefully some different stats or different abilities. I still don't know what, but it will be different characters that you can unlock through the game. They will have also different weapons, different ways of fighting with the driver. Yeah, that's basically the overall idea. So let's talk a little bit about Cinti. You can say whatever you want, that the assets are used by everyone and this is known everywhere. It doesn't matter to me at the end of the day because they are really good assets. They look really nice. They have everything that I need to make a game. And that's what I need also. Like, this would be too much time to develop all of this for the type of game that I want. Also, this huge tool that they created, it's only available for Unity, but thanks to a God developer named Jay Gilich, I think. Yeah. Jay Gilich. Sorry if I'm butchering the name, but this dude right here, together with SQLite, you install both of these and you got basically the tool working out for you in Godot, which is actually amazing. I tested out just a project just to see how it would work, and you can see over here, sorry about the quality of this. Yeah. And you can see over here that you create just basically a node that is called basically sidekick character. And then you have all the settings that you need to adjust on the right panel. And this is basically amazing because then you just need to create a UI that can iterate through these. Okay, you will still have some work, like I still had some work like digging through the code and whatnot to really, it's also good that you understand how things are working, just not moving around and okay, this only does this, that's it. No, actually look through the code, try to understand what he's doing, and then you can even iterate a little bit more on that. I already did a thing that you can adjust the shape keys of the character a little bit better, because this tool lets you adjust the fatness and the buff that the amount of buff that the character has. And this is really great actually to make the character even a little bit more custom to the player. And also at the end of the day, the player doesn't care at all. Like, as long as you make a good game, the players will like it. They don't care that much about the assets. Don't you see these days that Ball Pit and Mega Bonk, they are popping, and it's not that they have this amazing artwork, it's just because they are amazing games. And that's the idea. I'm not sure if I can make it, but that's the idea. let's move on to the engine, and I'm going to give you a quick showcase of the start of my game, at least. We got this beautiful splash screen, definitely not final, but I was testing out. And you can see that we already also have a loading screen. It passed quite briefly, it was quite quick, but there is already a loading screen, and this will handle the transition between the levels. But I will also show you in a little bit how that works. And yeah, pretty empty world, I know. This is also not final, it's also testing out a little bit of the setup that I wanted, because I knew that I wanted a 3D world main menu. And it's you, lovely effects. So the idea behind this 3D world is that when you want to customize, for example, and you want to customize the player, we can switch between cameras like this. And I think it's a little bit more dynamic. It gives a little bit more oomph to it, like a juice to it. I think it works great, actually. And as you can see, I already have the setup in here to work with the modular character from Cinti. We have all the different settings, but the idea, this will be the different tabs, and then you can set up all the different parts of the body that you want. I also add a quit prompt if you want to exit to desktop. And at least for the UI, I also added a small top bar in here where we'll show the coins and how many kills. I think I want to do some items that you can unlock with kills, not just coins. I don't know, but that will still be in development. This was basically just to test out a little bit of more of the UI and how it can come together. The campaign will be the standard game where you can control both characters, in this case the driver and the passenger. But a really good idea that I still don't know if I can make it would be to make the campaign somewhat co-op. Not somewhat, completely co-op, but not the standard couch co-op, actually like local co-op. And I think it will be more fun for the player. Instead of like worrying about controlling two characters, you can also grab a friend and play with your friend, and you can control each character. But that's still not decided yet. I still need to do a lot of work, and then I'm going to test out if I can actually make that type of feature. So we'll see how it goes. So right now, how this works is this will be the level that it's instanced every time, all the time actually. This will be our game manager, and this will handle basically all the levels that we load in, also together with some main UI like the splash screen and the loading screens, as you can see over here. I think that's it. How the transition to levels work. There's a bunch of tutorials actually on how to do the resource loader, using the resource loader from Godot, and it's actually pretty simple somewhat. So it basically checks what you want to load and grabs the whole objects that the level needs, I guess, and you can track the progress that it's loading. So in this case, if you load a loading scene, you can feed the progress to the loading scene, and we can show some beautiful UI with the percentage or a progress bar or something, and you can adapt to that. And then when the scene is completely loaded, you just replace your instance level, and that's it basically. Also, you can play with some animations to make it more fancy. As you can see, I have some fog and whatnot that shows up like with time. These are all done through the animation player. These are quite simple. I'm storing all of the levels on a singleton, and I have a bunch of these, but most probably I won't do 50 levels, of course. But I save them in a dictionary, and whenever I want to transition to a level, I just need to call the appropriate enum. On the actual loading screen, we have the script that handles the logic actually for loading all the information necessary for that scene. And you can see in here that we feed just the path to load, we call the resource loader, we load it as a threaded request, and then we can emit signals when it finishes loading. And then we can replace our instance level accordingly. I'm also using the game UI database a lot more, so I can research different UIs and see how people handle different situations, especially for the character creator. I redesigned that scene like 2 or 3 times because I was undecided on what to do and make it cohesive with the rest. But it's been a really great tool. You need to really filter out because there's also like few old games and some mobile games that don't match whatever I want to do. But you can definitely take a lot of information from here and a lot of tricks that other devs use to make the UI work in their games. I'm also following this post-apocalyptic theme. I got really inspired by 2 packs of Sinti, which is the Apocalypse Wasteland and the other Apocalypse pack. And these ones work really great with the setting I want. You can see over here. These look incredible, and also the vehicles. That was the biggest point of inspiration. And I definitely want to keep it in this theme. I really like this theme, and I think it can really work on what I want to do. I also got some UI effects already working because I also wanted to test out, because like particles in UI, for example, was a topic that I don't see a lot of people talking about. So I also always wondered how that was done. And I think I actually did. I also only did for the main menu for the buttons, but I think this actually looks really nice. The somewhat flames that you can see, this is just a particle system that's being instanced when the player overs the button. And it matches really well also with the panel that shows up from here. And these zoom in, zoom out settings, text changing color, this is all being done through Tweens, which is also an amazing tool that you should use in these types of situations, in my opinion. And I actually created a tool for it, which is resource based, and I can give you guys a quick look. All these tween datas that you see, these are different tweens that are used for the different states of the button, in this case, which is a button. And you can see over here that I set this up so I can define if it's parallel, the transition type, the ease type, and you just feed it through here. And then for the properties, you feed it a tween data property, and inside of this you can even customize it even more. So you can just set the final value, the tween duration, if it's chained or not, the delay before starting, and if you want to override the ease. On this final value, you can actually change this to be whatever variant you want, so you can still do a lot of changes. It's not as doing it through code. You will always have more possibilities while doing it through code, but then I can reuse this and I can use the same tween resource data to feed to other buttons, so it also keeps it consistent. For the flames, this is just a simple particle system, as you can see over here. I instance this and I also resize it according to the rectangle of the object that I'm attaching it to. So if I have like a small button, it will also readjust a little bit so it doesn't like create huge particles. So this is nice, and this fits really well also with that tween that shows up like that red panel that you can see over here. You can see this red panel, I'm also tweening it so it shows up. And this is done also with a shader that handles this transition, as you can see over here. So we're just adjusting this progress bar in a tween. Save and load system, save and load system. Yes, this is still not fully tested, but I also created somewhat of a tool for it. So let's say I have this save, I call it the save interface, but it's not actually an interface as you know it from other engines, let's say, because Godot doesn't handle interfaces for some reason. And on this, what it this interface does is it saves a key. So you need to identify it with something. In this case, we want to save it as a game manager. And over here, we can also configure some dependencies if this object has other dependencies. So it will wait for those dependencies to be loaded before it tries to load its data. And the actual save data that you want to save from the object itself. Then this will do the general save file. These will also push some warnings if you're missing something, because on the object that you want to save data from, you also need to implement onSave data loaded. So this will be, as you can see over here, a signal emitted from my interface when all the data is loaded from the save file. And this then will feed it to the object that you prepared, and you can do whatever you want in here with the data. So you can rearrange it again and put it back in its place where it should be. This is not fully tested, also that's why I want to finish actually quite quick the character creator, because then I can test it out with a real scenario. Let's say I want to save all the different parts, all the different colors, basically all the settings that the player selects. It will be saved into it to the player ID key, and then I can really test it out if we can load everything correctly. So a later video on that. And I think it can work actually good, because then each node has its own save interface. You can create more and attach it to different stuff in here. So you can actually create the save interface for every node that you need to save some data, and then just implement that method and distribute the data. Whatever your case is, but I think it can work like this. Then we just save it to a big dictionary. We have a save manager. Yeah, this is still not final because I won't add it to the group, but we will get all the save interface nodes, and we will save data to a global dictionary, and then we can load the data from there. So the save interfaces will basically feed the data that they have to this global dictionary. Then we store as a var, Jesus Christ, on our file. And then whenever we want to load the game or load some data from the game, we can just get that file, get that var, and we can grab the save interfaces can then grab whatever information they need through their key, which will be assigned in the global dictionary. Now, to the actual meat, gameplay-wise. What do I have gameplay-wise? I had a vehicle physics, but using a plugin. I did this in my previous game, vehicle physics, and it was quite tough. I also followed a tutorial from YouTube, from Exhilarate, if I'm not wrong. It was really good, but this plugin, it's amazing. It's called Godot, GEV, I think. Godot Easy Vehicle Physics. And this plugin will give you access to a vehicle controller node where you just set up a rigid body as your vehicle. You also need to set it up with the script that they have for the vehicle itself. And then you get all these configurations. You need to set up the wheels, but you get values for steering, for the front axle, for the rear axle, throttle, braking, stability, motor, whatever you might think of as an actual, let's say, car sim, it's in here. It might not be the most accurate physics, but still, for this type of game, it works amazing, and I can't believe the amazing work that this guy or these guys done with this plugin. It's really good. You can actually see over here that just with the basic setup, you get already a really nice, driving physics, let's say. I'm also using state machines for the vehicle logic, let's say, because I think every time it's a good thing to implement in your game, to split the logic a little bit, and also so you don't get just one massive script handling everything all the time. So with this scenario, you get different states, and then you can run the logic that you want depending on the state that the player is in. I'm using state charts for this, and you can go look up the plugin. It's really good as well for state machines. So we have states for idle and driving, and then we will have a parallel state. They call it parallel because these will act in conjunction. So it will tell us if the player starts to aim or is shooting, reloading, whatever action is doing. And this is the actual movement, if it's idle or driving, moving. Then I feed it into nodes, just blank nodes. And on this node itself, I will handle the logic. I connect the signals of the state that I need, the entered, exit processing, and physics processing. I'm also calculating already if the mouse is to the left or to the right of the vehicle when the player starts to aim. So when the player gets in the start aiming state, it will do this calculation. In this case, basically just a raycast from the camera to the world, and we will see where the mouse hits. And then we just get the cross vector from the forward vector of the vehicle and the mouse hit location. And from there, we can get the cross vector and we can check if the mouse is to the left or to the right of the vehicle. Also, this little red laser beam that you see over here, this was actually my first visual shader, actually. This is basically just a cylinder mesh, a really simple one. And I attached a shader to it that looks like this. It's quite messy, but it does the trick. It has some noise that I can set up and we get this effect. And this is basically to attach, this end will be attached to the weapon when we see the player shooting. This will be attached to the weapon, so it gives a little bit more clarity of where the character is shooting instead of just having the typical crosshair following the mouse. And I actually liked what it turned out. Like, it's really nice, at least for my first shader, it works really nice. We get this little fade out effect on the edge, also with some noise, and this little scrolling effect. I like it. I'm proud of myself. And unfortunately, from gameplay, that's all I have. That's all. I know that it's almost nothing. Also because I know that I spent a little bit too much working on UI. And it was also because it was a topic that I never dabbled like that deep into it, and I also want to do it. And at the end of the day, even if the game isn't fun, I can definitely reuse those systems to build just another game. But that's not in consideration. We're gonna make this game work. Also, I've been doing some preparations on Blender because these packs, at least these two that I mentioned that I really got inspired from, they come with a lot of vehicles, and I wanted to filter out because I think I also want to have some enemies, the driving vehicles, and I don't want that the player drives the same vehicles as the enemy, so I needed to filter out and select which ones goes to the ones that the player can unlock, which ones can be driven by enemies. And I'm also working on that. I'm rigging the vehicles so it's slightly easier to adjust car parts inside of the game. I'm just creating a simple rig where I can define like small things. For example, this one will control the window when it lifts up and the player starts aiming through the window. This bone will rotate and lift the window up. Bone setup for the wheels and for the steering wheel. So I also want to do some IK to it where the animation of the player when he's inside of the vehicle is holding the steering wheel. And I also got that. I'm going to show you just in a little bit because this is also the last topic of the video. For the vehicles, I'm going to use, actually this was the first one that I set up, which is also in the game that I want to test out first. And you can see in here that we have a ton of different vehicles to filter out from. I'm just working out on, in this case, the initial vehicles to add to the game, and also to then start working a little bit on the customization part. I can also want to change some parts of it, just like wheels and colors, and probably that will be some attachments, maybe. We'll see how it goes. I imported the skeleton that Cinti uses. That's also a challenge, a little bit of a challenge, because they use Maya, and it also gets a little bit tricky when you're trying to use armatures from Maya to Blender. But I kind of got it worked out. I saved the backup in here for you to see how it's working. And I also set up some IK bones. It's not working like totally accurate, but it still helps a ton when animating this thing. So you can see in here, that this is working appropriately. Let me just change this zoom a little bit. So you can see that if I do this, the IK solves it correctly. And this helps a lot when creating like at least a few animations. I know it won't be that visible because it's also a top-down, and I know that the character is not that visible, but I still want that little extra touch to it, where even if you only see like the arm sticking out and him doing this, it's already like a small extra that it's appealing. And I got some animations for it on the other rig that I copied from this one. I also just want to have a few poses, like the main ones, like driving, aiming, shooting, maybe reloading, I'm not sure. For example, I have this for the idle, and you can see that it's just a small bounce. Player is holding the shift gear, the steering wheel. This is just a basic idle. I also got the aiming, at least for the pistol, which is just actually 3 frames of animation. It's just some basic poses so that just to give that tiny bit of extra touch. And I think that's it, guys. I actually don't have anything extra to show. I'm gonna keep iterating on this project. That's what I wanted. I'm really liking where it's going, and I'm really hoping for it. As I told you, I want to finish at least the character creation before I can move on to more gameplay features. I want to finish that at least so I can just top off my save and load system and then move on with actual gameplay and shooting, reloading, and doing stuff actually, instead of just buttons and menus and whatnot. And that's all, folks. I will see y'all later.